Good day, everybody. I want to read an excerpt from a real good book written by Malcolm Gladwell called Talking to Strangers. Uh, Malcolm Gladwell does a fantastic job in summarizing great research in social sciences for the common man to understand. So, examples of his great books are Tipping Point, Blink, Outliers, and then this is Talking to Strangers. Don't look at the size of the book, it's large print. This book is particularly good for all people in law making, law enforcement, and law overseeing, like attorneys and judges. But this particular excerpt is from chapter 8 called The Fraternity Party, a case study. This reading I'm doing is particularly for youngsters and parents of youngsters in the age group of say 16 to 22, college growing, and who may have exposure to fraternity parties and so on. What happens to us when we get drunk is a function of the particular path the alcohol takes as it seeps through our brain tissue. The effects begin in the frontal lobes, the part of our brain behind our forehead that governs attention, motivation, planning, and learning. The first drink dampens activity in that region. It makes us a little dumber, less capable of handling competing, complicated considerations. It hits the reward centers of the brain, the areas that govern euphoria, and gives them a little jolt. It finds its way into the amygdala. The amygdala's job is to tell us how to react to the world around us. Are we being threatened? Should we be afraid? Alcohol turns the amygdala down a notch. The combination of those three effects is where myopia comes from. We don't have the brain power anymore to handle more complex long-term considerations. We are distracted by the unexpected pleasure of the alcohol. Our neurological burglar alarm system is turned off. We become altered versions of ourselves, beholden to the very moment. Alcohol also finds its way to your cerebellum at the very back of the brain, which is involved in balance and coordination. That is why you start to stumble and stagger when intoxicated. These are the predictable effects of getting drunk. But under certain very particular circumstances, especially if you drink a lot of alcohol very quickly, something else happens. Alcohol hits the hippocampus, small sausage-like regions on each side of the brain that are responsible for forming memories about our lives. At a blood alcohol level of roughly 0.08, the legal level of intoxication, the hippocampus starts to struggle. When you wake up the morning after a cocktail party and remember meeting someone but cannot for the life of you remember their name or the stories they told you, that is because of the 2 shots of whiskey you drank in quick succession reaching your hippocampus. Drink a little more and the gaps get larger to the point where maybe you remember pieces of the evening, but other details can be summoned only with the greatest difficulty. Aaron White at the National Institutes of Health outside Washington, D.C., is one of the world's leading experts on blackouts. And he says that there is no particular logic to which bits get remembered and which don't. Emotional salience doesn't seem to have an impact on the likelihood that your hippocampus records something, he says. What that means is that you may go to a party and you might remember having a drink downstairs, but I remember nothing else at all. But then you will remember getting in the taxi. At the next level, roughly around a blood alcohol level of 0.15, the hippocampus simply shuts down entirely. In the true pure blackout, White says, there is just nothing to recall. So there is a alcohol researcher named Donald Goodwin, and in one of his essays, he told a story, and I will read that story and then end this excerpt reading. A 39-year-old salesman awoke in a strange hotel room. He had a mild hangover but otherwise felt normal. His clothes were hanging neatly in the closet. He was clean shaven. He dressed and went down to the lobby. He learned from the clerk that he was in Las Vegas and that he had checked in 2 days back. It has been obvious that he has been drinking, the clerk said, but he had not seemed very drunk. The day was Saturday the 14th. His last recollection was of sitting in a St. Louis bar on Monday the 9th. He had been drinking all day and was drunk, but could remember everything perfectly until about 3 p.m. when, like a curtain dropping, his memory went blank. It remained blank for approximately 5 days. 3 years later, it was still blank. So here is exactly what happened to the salesperson. The salesman had left the bar in St. Louis, gone to the airport, bought a plane ticket, flown to Las Vegas, found a hotel, checked in, hung up his suit, shaved, and apparently functioned perfectly well in the world, all while in a blackout mode. That is the way blackouts work. At or around the 0.15 mark, the hippocampus shuts down and memories stop forming. But it's entirely possible that the frontal lobes, cerebellum, and amygdala of that same drinker at the same time continue to function more or less normally. So, if you can do anything in a blackout that you can do when you're drunk. So, basic message here is moderate your drinking and you're accountable to your actions whether you have a blackout or not. So it's very important that we moderate, especially youngsters going to college and are part of fraternities. Thank you.